move, Mr. Chairman.
You're happy to move? Biosecurity, you're happy to second? Any discussion?
Hang on. Sorry.
All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, no. Carried. Climate change. Questions? We better wait for Councillor Gilbertson. This is his pet topic.
It's just redoing some of the submissions.
Climate change. Any questions in regard to our response to climate change?
I don't think we should change it.
Any helpful questions?
Someone happy to move? Moved. Seconded. Councillor McGregor. Anyone wish to speak? No one wishes to speak. Put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, no. Carried. Page 9, Creative Hawke's Bay.
Nice to people come along and ask for money. Yeah. I feel we should give them a box of chocolate or something.
Any questions? Who's moved that? Councillor Douglas. Yeah. Put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, no. Carried. Page 10, Economic Development. Oh, hang on. Any questions in regard to that? Councillor Douglas.
In respect to the proposal, I'd like to be a little more assertive. If Councillor Dick appreciates it, declines a request, I'd actually like to say we are involved. Full stop. It's a really important role.
Okay. Somebody had
Are we
question?
in debate?
No, we're not. It hasn't. It's been moved, but we don't have a seconder yet. So.
Well, I was simply going to say the 14 up there, rather than say declines a request, which of course we do, but asserts that there is a role for the Regional Council.
I'm happy with that.
So you happy to second that? Yeah, wish to speak? Councillor Curtin.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think. Sorry, what were we doing? Mr. Chairman, I think there are some messages in here that should be considered, and I've raised some over the past couple of years around the activities of the Economic Development Agency and what's it's morphed into. We talk about a regional approach. However, what we see appear to be has happened is the economic development focus of that this regional council was funding has morphed into morphed into activities which are more appropriately dealt with by local authorities. That business-to-business attraction, activities around promoting, for example, youth employment. I could go on and name probably half a dozen areas that the local authorities are active in, and yet this council contributes funds to an entity which continues to do that as well. So my point is this: there is significant duplication and inappropriate spending going on around this council's economic development effort. If we remained as we are mandated to, if you like, in the broader picture, Councillor Douglas has referred to, the Regional Council is in this space, that is a reality. It's what we do in the space that I suggest to you and my fellow councillors needs to be closely considered. If you've got those local authorities, if you like, spotting business opportunities in one-on-one business attraction activity, then let them do that. Let them get on with that. Don't duplicate it at the regional level. So that's probably my biggest complaint about the activities we've engaged in over the past couple of years. We've got substantial other economic development activity going on, apropos the water storage scheme, which in my view is entirely appropriate because it has that bigger scale to it. Providing information ought to be a substantial part of those outputs for our Economic Development Agency. What we've got has happened is that we've had an ailing partner, the Chamber of Commerce. We've buttressed their lack of contribution and patronage by the business sector in Hawke's Bay. We developed an entity that forestalled substantive problems for that entity, and now we're left with a bugger's muddle, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Other speakers, Councillor Gilbertson.
Yeah, I just continue a wee bit on that theme, Mr. Chairman. I think, just by example, one of the best economic development things I think this council could promote would be to complete the Te Apiti Road between Waimarama and Kairakau. But things like that get lost because we'd much rather sort of create structures and things. I think the best thing this council and any council can do is to have a low rating base and a regulatory regime that makes it easy to do business and leave it at that, because, as Councillor Curtin's implying, we pour millions of dollars over many years into structures that work partially and will never work until we get the councils working together, so it's sort of throwing good money after bad. So I think he's got a point there, but whether we get that across the submitter or not is a difficult question.
Wish to sum up?
Yes, well, I will make a few points in rebuttal. Clearly there's work in progress for Business Hawke's Bay in establishing itself as a separate entity with its own CEO. I see that as a positive move. I think the original relationship was with the Chamber of Commerce was probably expedient and necessary, but it should have grown beyond that. And the Chamber, of course, is a membership service organisation. Business Hawke's Bay is not. As to duplication, I believe that there is little, if none. The theme is collaboration, and for the very first time ever in my living history, which goes back 100 years or so, the councils and the other key agencies sit around the same table and, at the very least, discuss and know what each other is doing, and that's a absolutely fundamental step forward. Sure, as I understand it, Hastings has got some focus on youth employment. That's good. The other members of the advisory group know about that and support it and don't get in its way. Napier City Council focuses on small business support and business mentoring across the region, and the others don't get in that way. So collaboration is at work. As far as the regional council is concerned, we've got 3 staff led by Michael Bassett-Foss. Michael is spending most of his time on the supply chain implications for the Ruataniwha, and that's most appropriate. He does that because very, very significant down the track benefits from the scheme and added value processing and so on. But then he has 2 staff and a relationship with the Chamber where government funds for research and product development are distributed, and that's done very, very successfully. He's got a little bit of a discretionary budget, and we've been able to tap into that to help with the rail initiative. So I personally believe things are going as well as they can, but just acknowledging that Business Hawke's Bay, its establishment as a separate entity and its staff resourcing is a work in progress, and we need to keep a bit of an eye on it as a major stakeholder and funder.
Thank you. Well, I'll put that motion in. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, no. Carried. Thank you. Page 11. Environment Centre Sustaining Hawke's Bay Trust request for funding. Any questions in regard to this item?
Question, and it goes a little bit wider than this one. We have a couple of requests. We had one that actually came from left field, which is actually not in order, because although it was for funding for the following year, because part of public submission making is the ability to actually know what's being there. And when something is fired at you on the day, it actually stops anyone else being involved. I really wonder whether in the future it is possible that we put up again for debate through the annual plan process whether there should be a contestable fund. We've had it once before. We decided it had come to the end. We had criteria for applying it. If the public want a contestable fund, then perhaps we should have a look at it, and they should accept that it has to come out of rates. But without that funding mechanism there, we haven't got anywhere to grant the money from.
And your question is?
My question is, should we look at the next, with certainly the modification to the next time we go into long-term plan, to look at whether we should consult on whether there should be a contestable fund for community partnerships?
Yes, I mean that's perfectly feasible. At the last, for the current long-term plan, you looked at that money, how it was being used, and decided to refocus it elsewhere. And so there's nothing to stop you looking at that again next time round.
Well, I certainly hope we don't. My question is, rather than open that box, which I think we'd got on top of and closed and their submissions reflected, is there opportunity here for a contract for service opportunity with the Environment Centre? For example, could we put our wonderful displays of the water storage project in their facility for display under a contract relationship? That sort of arrangement.
Well, certainly that's a kind of approach that we encourage with all of those groups who previously had funding from us, that we're looking at a more a targeted project-focused funding for them delivering certain outcomes that we would like, rather than just a general grant. What we have been in discussion with the Environment Centre is actually around a display involving our clean heat program. So that would involve perhaps installing a fire, clean heat fire, dry firewood and all that information. So we're currently in discussions with them about that, and particularly if they are able to secure, the new venue that they're hoping to do, that would certainly be a part of that, and we would fund that out of our Heat Smart promotion budget. So that's a kind of example that we would be looking at to assist them with funding. And you're right, Councillor, other opportunities such as, the model of the Ruatanipa water storage dam, or information about it, or any of the other projects that we're doing that might be relevant to the people that use the Environment Centre would be something that we could provide funding for and assist them in that way. It would also be helping us as well.
Out of your latest comments, Ms. Lambert, this may be a relevant question, but over the years, the Environment Centre has come to us for funding over many years now, and at times we have funded them in some way. But I recall not so many years ago, staff saying to us that they felt that the funding by the way of grant to the Environment Centre wasn't producing a return for council. Is that you've more or less answered that in your previous comments. But
what we looked at was not specifically the funding for the Environment Centre, but that $120,000 that was in Project 874 that went to, there was 5 groups that really had that funding tied up for the whole 3 years of the last long-term plan. The Environment Centre or Sustaining Hawke's Bay Trust was one of those groups, and we asked you to reconsider the use of that money generally, not specifically just around that trust.
They still get MFE funding?
Someone happy to move?
Chairman, I move that there's no change to the plan.
As is written there, we've someone to second that.